Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a book review of the Agatha Christie murder mystery, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, one of her earliest Poirot novels, one of her earliest mystery novels from 1926. I believe that this is the fourth Poirot novel, and man, is it interesting. I will keep this video spoiler-free, despite how difficult that is to do with a murder mystery book, but I will keep it spoiler-free. The first thing I will say is that this book does something that Agatha Christie often does, is it doesn't just have a clever twist, it's the way that she sets up the twist from early on in the book. That is what's so clever about it. In fact, I commented to a coworker at work, because we talk about the books I read, and I mentioned to the coworker, what sets this book apart is part of the premise. And little did I know that in revealing that to her, I actually was spoiling the book because I had inadvertently figured out who the murderer was. And I'm very pleased with myself that I was able to do that from early on. And really, the way that this book has a way of making you want to go back and reread the book to get a new perspective, which I really appreciate. Some Agatha Christie books have that, and some don't. For instance, my favorite Agatha Christie book is Crooked House. And I love that book. It is the first Agatha Christie book I read, and it's still the absolute favorite for me. It doesn't have me go afterwards and say, I need to reread it again to get the new perspective. I've got all the perspective I need after reading that book. Another book, however, is And Then There Were None. After reading that book, I absolutely want to go back and reread that book because the perspective changes so much after finishing that book. And then other books of hers, are one way or the other. This one is definitely one of those, oh boy, I one day want to reread this. Not right now, but one day want to reread it just so I can understand the twist and understand the setup and stuff because it totally, my perspective of what I just read really changes. As always, it's a very entertaining read to get through this. I don't think that this is as tightly paced or quite the characters quite as sharp as perhaps some of her other mysteries. And I think this is partially due to the fact that this is one of her earliest mystery novels. So it loses a little bit in that regard. But it does gain a little bit in that it does have an interesting perspective that this is the closest to a Sherlock Holmes novel that she ever wrote. Now, when you talk about murder mysteries, the two big names are Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie's Poirot. And generally speaking, I think they're very differently written, very differently set up. The way that they do setup and payoffs, I think, is much better with Agatha Christie. I think that she's much better at doing setups and then revealing payoffs and making you go, oh, that makes sense. I read that earlier. Like the way that not only is the characters revealing information, but you're doing it too and you're understanding it because of that. I think that Conan Doyle writes entertaining books and really strong characters, perhaps, but he didn't write necessarily the twists and the setup and payoff as much. And this is a good example of the classic Agatha Christie setup and payoff. But the difference is that the main characters really feel like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Here you have Poirot, who is the clever detective, and then he basically ropes in someone to help him out, which is Dr. Shepard, who basically serves as the Dr. Watson, and kind of like how Dr. Watson is the chronicler of a lot of the Sherlock Holmes stories, Dr. Shepard is the chronicler here. So you instantly feel like a connection between the two of them because this is first person kind of, but you also feel that Poirot is really arrogant in this book, perhaps for the Poirot books that I've read, this is the most arrogant I felt like I've read him. In the other books, he's quite confident in himself, but he makes some comments here that make, oh, you would never be able to hide that from me. The truth always comes to me. Just the way he said that was so arrogant, it reminded me of Sherlock Holmes. And then there are ways where he kind of puts down Dr. Shepard a little bit, where Dr. Shepard reveals information that he's found, and Poirot reads through this and is like, yeah, I knew all this. You got some interesting bits, but you missed all the important stuff. And it's like, Poirot, you're a little arrogant snot. And so, which is funny because usually I really like Poirot because he's kind of this gentlemanly old man that people often overlook despite his brilliant nature. Yet he still seemed kind of arrogant here. So it's just interesting that this is the most Sherlock Holmesian of the 10 Agatha Christie books I've read, which, by the way, this is my 10th Agatha Christie novel, which I'm excited. So now, from now on, I could do a top 10 if I wanted, but also it means that I'm like an eighth of the way through her novels, which makes me excited that I'm that far into her works. For me, I would put this kind of in the middle. Like, I don't think this is my favorite, and I don't even necessarily think it's the best, but I will say that this is a well worth book because of the nature of the twist. I think the nature of the twist will keep it. You know, when you read, I think some of her stories, Murder on the Orient Express is a classic way of how you do a twist because it breaks like two of the three major rules, one or two major rules at once. Crooked House has a very unique twist coupled with a very unique premise. But it's not the most unique, but it's two very unique things. And then you have something like, and then there were None, which has one of the most unique twists. And then also, there was one of the book, well, Sparkling Cyanide just does a good job with the twist. But you see how you have to, it's not just about having a good twist, it's about making the nature of it, the setup, the payoff, the way that it changes your perception of the book. This certainly has that. I just don't think it's quite as enjoyable as those others I just mentioned. So that's why I'm like, it's probably middle of the road. It's better than some of the lower ones. Like Five Little Pigs was a good book, but not particularly memorable. I think that Halloween Party was a good book, but not particularly memorable. I think this is better than those two. I think it's on par with Cards on the Table. Probably on par, but maybe a little bit higher than Hercule Poirot's Christmas. And then I don't know how I would react to all of the other Poirot books because I'm trying to remember all the ones I've read off the top of my head. Maybe around where ABC Murders was, in that range. So it's in the middle of the pack for me, but still an amazing book. I still give it a 9.0. That shows how strong Agatha Christie is, that a 9 out of 10 is a mid book for her because she's just that good at mystery. She is certainly the queen of mystery, certainly my favorite mystery writer, although I have a few others I really enjoy. But I will say that I think that she's creeping into my top 10 just favorite novelists of all time, not just for mystery, because she just delivers. It's every book she turns in is a banger. I don't know how she does it. So anyway, I love this book. But beware in the comments section. People might spoil it in the comments, and I'd love to talk spoilers in the comments. If you've read the book, what did you think of it? Did you kind of notice the nature of the book and why it was unique? And then also, did you pick up on the twist and all that stuff? I'd really love to be able to talk about all that. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.